Yes, I do work at 4 a.m. as a 10-year-old. It was great. It was my favorite day as a child.
They gave you cancer. Who cares? You're gonna die anyway.
In the early 90s, Macaulay Culkin wasn't just a movie star, he was childhood.
If you do a real good job, Dad, I'll tell you where the coins are.
His face lit up billboards, cereal boxes, and living rooms across the globe. But by the time he turned 14, he had vanished from Hollywood's spotlight. No scandals, no farewell tour, just gone.
Ma'am, I'm 8 years old. You think I'd be here alone? I don't think so.
What happened to the boy who once ruled the box office with a smirk and a scream? The answer wasn't shown on camera. It played out in courtrooms, quiet apartments, and behind paparazzi flashbulbs. This is the story they never told, until now. A star is born, instant fame at age 10. Before he was Kevin McAllister, Macaulay Carson Culkin was just a kid from New York City with a love for performing and a knack for timing that couldn't be taught.
I'm not apologizing to Buzz. I'd rather kiss a toilet seat.
Born in 1980, the third of 7 siblings, he was raised in a small apartment on the Upper West Side. His father, Kit Culkin, a former Broadway actor, pushed young Macaulay into the spotlight early. He did this not because he had a hobby, but because of a mission.
Maybe you should ask Santa for a new family.
I don't want a new family. I don't want any family. Families suck.
By age 8, Macaulay had already appeared in theater productions, TV commercials, and small film roles. He was good, really good. But what came next would catapult him into a level of fame few children or adults ever experience.
People saw me, like directors and stuff like that saw me. So I auditioned and I got like movies and stuff like that.
In 1990, everything changed. Home Alone hit theaters and became an instant global phenomenon. Directed by Chris Columbus and written by John Hughes, the film relied entirely on Macaulay's charm, energy, and comic precision.
Buzz, your girlfriend. Woof.
Audiences immediately fell in love with the mischievous but lovable Kevin McAllister, and the film shattered box office records, becoming the highest-grossing live-action comedy at the time.
Hello.
It grossed $476.7 million worldwide. It wasn't just a hit, it was a cultural event. Suddenly, Macaulay Culkin wasn't just a child actor. He was a household name worldwide. His scream, his face, his voice were instantly recognizable. From there, Hollywood couldn't get enough.
I made my family disappear.
Studios rushed to cast him in project after project, riding the momentum of his overnight stardom. Between 1990 and 1994, Culkin starred in a string of films, including 1991, My Girl, 1993, The Good Son, where he showed his darker acting range opposite Elijah Wood.
Shut up about my mom. Hey, don't get mad. I'm just trying to be scientific. Just shut up or I'll hit you.
He also starred in Richie Rich, Getting Even with Dad, The Page Master, The Nutcracker, and the like. By 12 years old, he had starred in over a dozen major films, many of them built entirely around him.
And how are we this morning?
Fine. Is my transportation here?
Out in front, sir.
And the money followed. At the peak of his fame, Macaulay Culkin was the highest-paid child actor in history, earning $4.5 million for Getting Even with Dad and $8 million for Richie Rich. That was more than most adult stars of the time. To studios, he was a sure thing. He was known as the golden ticket. But behind the velvet ropes and flashing lights, a storm was brewing. Because while the world saw a confident, funny, charming kid, Culkin wasn't in control of his career. Not really. His work schedule was intense. His privacy vanished overnight. And his home life was anything but stable.
Yeah, no, it just took 6 years off, trying to figure out everything, trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my life, funny enough.
Insiders recall how Kit Culkin Macaulay's father and unofficial manager, began gaining a reputation in Hollywood as difficult, overbearing, and manipulative. Directors, producers, and agents complained about his demands and control.
Oh, I haven't spoken to him in 30-something years. Oh, he deserves it too. You know.
But since Macaulay was the star who brought in millions, few dared to push back. And Macaulay, he kept showing up, doing the work, and smiling for the cameras.
Hold it like this with a... Whoa, food fight. Now you got a point there.
But behind that smile, the pressure was mounting. His early fame was meteoric, but meteors burn hot and fast. While most kids were worried about school or hobbies, Macaulay was carrying movie franchises.
You're the only one acting up. Now get upstairs.
I am upstairs, dummy.
Headlining global press tours and shouldering a family's financial future. He was living every kid's dream, but inside, he was quietly losing his childhood. But what exactly happened? Stay with us to find out. The pressure cooker, overworked and overexposed. At just 12 years old, Macaulay Culkin had already become a millionaire, an icon, and the center of one of Hollywood's most intense child star schedules.
I can't leave. This happened to me last year and almost wrecked my Christmas.
But success comes with a price, doesn't it? But for Macaulay, the cost was steep. From 1990 to 1994, he wasn't just acting, he was churning out films non-stop. Movie sets became his classrooms. Production crews replaced teachers and classmates. He didn't get breaks between roles. He went straight from one set to another. It was a conveyor belt of costumes, dialogue, lighting cues, and interviews.
I mean, this is it, pal. You are a bona fide star as of right now. The #1 box office movie of the weekend.
Most child actors do a handful of projects a year. Macaulay did 10 films in 5 years, with press junkets and red carpets in between. According to those who worked with him, the days were long, and the expectations were relentless.
Excuse me, where's the lobby?
Down the hall and to the left.
Thanks.
He had to be funny, sharp, emotionally on cue, and perfect, every single time. Behind the scenes, directors and producers began noticing cracks in the facade. In interviews, Macaulay would sometimes sound rehearsed or withdrawn. His eyes didn't always match the smile.
Or Uncle Buck or something, this kid would follow me up the stairs. And he'd say, "Does Uncle Buck live with you?"
While still professional on set, insiders say the joy started to fade, and a quiet exhaustion began to take its place. At home, things weren't easier. Kit Culkin, now seen as a dominant force in his son's life, controlled every aspect of Macaulay's career, from script choices to appearance fees. He negotiated contracts, approved schedules, and often made decisions based on financial gain rather than what was best for his son.
He's a man who had 7 kids, and now he has 4 grandkids, and none of them want anything to do with him.
Industry professionals describe Kit as a stage parent gone too far. Reports circulated of heated arguments with producers, demands for billing priority, and controlling behavior that made working with Macaulay more difficult, despite the actor's own professionalism. Worse, it became clear that Kit's ambitions weren't limited to Macaulay. He had aspirations for the entire Culkin family. Macaulay's younger siblings, Kieran, Rory, and Shane, were also pushed into the business.
My older brother Shane, he was in a Broadway show.
For Kit, the Culkins weren't just a family, they were a brand. And Macaulay was the centerpiece. The line between parent and manager blurred. And for Macaulay, that meant there was nowhere to retreat, no place where he could simply be a kid. In interviews years later, Macaulay spoke openly about this period of his life, saying, "I was tired, I was done, I was a kid and I just wanted to be a kid." He wasn't acting out or rebelling, he just wanted normalcy. But for someone like Macaulay Culkin, normal had become impossible.
Like when kids in my class weigh about 97, so they outweigh me by about 30 pounds.
As his fame soared, the media frenzy intensified. Paparazzi followed him everywhere, Tabloids speculated about his every move, his relationships, and his earnings. Privacy wasn't just a luxury he couldn't afford. It was gone. He was on the cover of every teen magazine, sold as a dream life.
He was the highest-paid child actor ever, reportedly making $8 million per film at his peak.
But in reality, he was a child under siege by expectations, media, and his own family. He tried to speak up. He asked to slow down, but the machine had already been built, and it needed to keep running. The early signs of burnout were there, but few paid attention. Not because they didn't care, but because they didn't want to stop the show. Hollywood had found its golden child.
Why did he abandon his career? What happened to Macaulay Culkin?
And it wasn't ready to let go. By the time Macaulay turned 14, the pressure had become unbearable. He had enough. He didn't want more scripts, more premieres, or more headlines. He just wanted out. And then, almost without warning, he disappeared from the screen. For the public, it was confusing. One day, he was everywhere, and the next, he was gone. But for Macaulay Culkin, this was the first act of rebellion and the first step toward survival. Before we go on, if you are enjoying this video, make sure you subscribe to this channel and hit that notification bell. Let's continue. Family chaos. The custody battle heard around Hollywood. For most kids, parents argue about chores, bedtimes, or screen time. But for Macaulay Culkin, the fight between his parents became a public, high-stakes legal war. This was a one fought not over custody of a child, but over control of a multi-million-dollar fortune.
Most of it, about 90% of my money, into a guarded account that even I couldn't touch until I turned 18.
By the time he was 14, Macaulay had made more money than most adults will ever see in a lifetime. His acting career had earned an estimated $50 million, all while he was still too young to open a bank account. The law required that a portion of those earnings be set aside in a trust, the infamous Coogan account, designed to protect child actors from financial exploitation. But that didn't stop the conflict.
Although he is now 20, to many, he will always be that little boy in the movies.
In 1995, Macaulay's parents, Kit Culkin and Patricia Brentrup, who were never married, split up. What followed was one of the ugliest custody battles in Hollywood history. Don't be deceived, this was not just over who would raise Macaulay, but over who would manage his money. The tabloids feasted on the chaos. Legal documents, public accusations, and insider leaks painted a picture of a family in collapse. Kit and Patricia both claimed to act in Macaulay's best interest, but to him, it felt like neither of them was really listening.
My father was quite insistent about that, so I had to memorize the whole episode.
Behind closed doors, the situation was even worse. Macaulay would later reflect on how powerless he felt during this time. It was like I didn't even exist in the middle of it all, he recalled in an interview. They were fighting over the money, not me. I just want them out of my life. He wasn't exaggerating. The courts weren't just deciding where Macaulay would live, they were determining who would gain legal control over his earnings and future business opportunities. For a teenager who had already spent most of his childhood working, it was devastating.
We always talk about how we don't remember our life before our kids.
It wasn't just a normal childhood he was losing, but also losing faith in the people who were supposed to protect him, to care for him, to love him. And so, Macaulay Culkin did something almost unheard of for someone his age. At just 15, he hired his own legal representation and filed to emancipate himself from both parents. The court petition requested the removal of his parents' names from his financial trust, placing control of his fortune in the hands of an independent financial advisor. It was a bold move, and it sent shockwaves through the entertainment world. Some called it brave, others called it sad.
I told them to call it retirement, call it whatever they wanted. I just said I would never wanted to do it again, and so don't even bring it up.
But to Macaulay, it was the only way out. He wasn't trying to hurt his parents. He was trying to regain control of his life. After the emancipation was granted, Macaulay went silent. He stepped away from Hollywood, from press, and from public life almost entirely. No films, no interviews, no appearances. For nearly a decade, he lived in what could only be described as self-imposed exile. He moved to New York City and later to Paris. He enrolled in high school, spent time with friends, traveled, and tried, for the first time in years, to just exist without cameras, contracts, or expectations. But the damage had been done. His relationship with his father was severed completely. Kit Culkin, once the driving force behind his fame, became a ghost in Macaulay's life. They stopped speaking altogether. Macaulay described their relationship as toxic, and in later interviews, he would make it clear he didn't miss it.
Do all the things I've been wanting to do for so long, you know. So, yeah, I just disappeared, said never bring it up again.
As for his mother, Patricia, the relationship was strained but less hostile. Over time, they rebuilt some connection, but the wounds of the past remained. Macaulay's siblings, including fellow actors Kieran and Rory Culkin, also felt the aftershocks of their family's implosion.
Did you see what happened to your older brother Macaulay?
I mean, it just sort of happens naturally, you know.
Though they remained close to Macaulay, each had to navigate their own way through a legacy marked by early fame, parental control, and fractured trust. What Macaulay Culkin endured in those years would have broken many. At an age when most teenagers are navigating high school and first crushes, he was navigating legal emancipation, fractured family bonds, and complete career burnout. But this chapter of his life wasn't just about loss, it was about reclaiming autonomy, about stepping away from a system that had used him up and choosing to live on his own terms.
Nasty stories always around about my father and this and that. Just kind of like had to throw all that aside and just kind of start all over again.
And though the public may have seen it as Macaulay disappearing, in truth, it was the first real time he had ever been free. Let's take a look at what he had been doing after that. What was his biggest regrets? Continue watching to find out. The fall, drugs, isolation, and tabloid obsession.
When I'm watching it, I'm seeing, like, I'm remembering that day on set, you know, like, oh, how I was, you know.
For nearly a decade, Macaulay Culkin lived outside the spotlight by choice. After emancipating himself from his parents and retreating from Hollywood, he became a ghost of his former fame. No new films, no public appearances, no interviews, just silence. But Hollywood doesn't like to be ignored, especially by someone it once made into a global phenomenon. And so, in Macaulay's absence, the media filled in the blanks. Tabloids began painting a picture of a lost child star spiraling into darkness. Rumors of drug abuse, depression, and reclusive behavior took center stage. Paparazzi photos began circulating. Grainy, zoomed-in shots of Macaulay looking gaunt, pale, and withdrawn. Headlines screamed things like, "What happened to Macaulay Culkin?"
And then you kind of stopped when you were, what, 14?
Yeah, about 13, 14. I needed something else. I needed to grow and develop as a person.
And from box office king to tragic recluse. One photo in particular, taken in 2012, showed him walking through New York City, clutching a can of Red Bull, looking unusually thin. The media exploded with speculation. Was he on heroin? Was he dying? Was this another tragic Hollywood downfall? But most of it wasn't true. Macaulay later addressed those rumors with frustration and dry humor. In an interview with The Guardian, he quipped, "No, I wasn't using heroin. No, I wasn't dying. But people love a good train wreck story, especially when it's someone they once put on a pedestal."
What are the most other bizarre things that people have you heard about yourself?
Oh, I die all the time.
World had turned Macaulay into a symbol. It was first of childhood joy, then of adolescent collapse. But the truth was far more complicated. After stepping away from acting, Macaulay struggled with isolation and identity. He had spent his formative years performing for others, being managed, branded, and watched. Now, he was free. But freedom can be disorienting when you've never had it before. He experimented with the usual vices, alcohol, marijuana, psychedelic mushrooms, but despite the media's wild claims, there was no public meltdown, no rehab stint, no arrests related to substance abuse. In fact, Macaulay has consistently denied having any long-term addiction issues.
I always kind of felt that it was almost expected of me. I stayed away from it.
You never did drugs?
Experiment, but nothing serious.
He did, however, get arrested once, in 2004 in Oklahoma for marijuana possession and a couple of prescription pills without a bottle. He spent a brief time in jail, paid a small fine, and was released. But that mugshot, it followed him for years. To the media, it confirmed the narrative. The boy from Home Alone was broken, but Macaulay refused to play along. In a rare interview with Esquire, he said, "I know who I am. People may not know the whole story, but I do, and I've made peace with it." Instead of chasing a comeback, he leaned into obscurity. He moved to Paris for a few years, not for the romance, but for the anonymity. As he later joked, "I can walk around and no one bothers me. The French just don't care who I am." During this time, he also dabbled in weird, wonderful projects. He played in an indie comedy rock band called the Pizza Underground, which parodied Velvet Underground songs with pizza-themed lyrics. He launched a satirical lifestyle website called Bunny Ears, a tongue-in-cheek parody of Goop. He did voice work, appeared in sketches, even reprised his Home Alone role in a Google ad, but only on his terms. Rather than be the tragic former child star, Macaulay reinvented himself as a cult figure, private, odd, and unexpectedly self-aware. He even poked fun at his own image. On social media, he once posted, "Wanna feel old? I'm 40. You're welcome." The tweet went viral. People laughed and remembered why they liked him in the first place. Still, the emotional scars remained. He's admitted in interviews that he has trouble trusting people. That fame messed with his sense of identity. That he spent years unraveling what it meant to live a life that wasn't built around public approval. He didn't seek out redemption. He sought out peace. And in doing so, Macaulay Culkin became something rare in Hollywood. A child star who survived not by staying famous, but by letting go of fame completely. But while the world was busy speculating about his downfall, something else was happening quietly in the background. Something the tabloids didn't notice. Macaulay Culkin was healing. The comeback few noticed. By the time the world stopped whispering about Macaulay Culkin's downfall, he had already begun rebuilding, quietly, intentionally, and far away from the spotlight that once consumed him. This wasn't a headline-grabbing comeback. There was no blockbuster, no big Hollywood return. Instead, Macaulay's re-entry into public life was low-key, offbeat, and completely on his own terms. One of the first signs came in 2013 when he formed the Pizza Underground, a parody band that reworked Velvet Underground songs with pizza-themed lyrics. It was silly, unexpected, and strangely brilliant. Critics didn't know what to make of it, but fans loved the irreverence.
It makes me fart.
Macaulay wasn't chasing Oscars, he was having fun. And for once, it looked like he meant it. Then came Bunny Ears, a satirical lifestyle blog and podcast launched in 2018.
Macaulay Culkin, the Home Alone star, has a satirical blog and podcast, Bunny Ears.
Styled like a parody of wellness brands such as Gwyneth Paltrow's Goop, the platform blended absurd humor with deadpan sincerity. In interviews, Macaulay described it as like The Onion meets GQ. Again, it wasn't about profit or prestige, it was about expression, about reclaiming his narrative and turning the spotlight into something he could control. The podcast revealed a different Macaulay.
This is the Bunny Ears Podcast. Welcome again. Yeah, this week we have on a really classy guest.
This was a Macaulay who was relaxed, funny, insightful, and deeply self-aware. He spoke openly about his childhood, his estranged relationship with his father, and how he processes trauma. No PR filters, no rehearsed lines, just honesty. And perhaps that's what endeared him to a new generation. He didn't ask to be seen again, but when he was, he showed up as someone real. In 2021, Macaulay returned to scripted television with a recurring role in American Horror Story, Double Feature. It was his first major screen role in years. Critics praised his performance, noting the blend of charisma and emotional depth he brought to the part. It wasn't just nostalgia casting, he had something to say again. But maybe the most surprising chapter in his comeback came not from a screen or stage, but from his personal life. After years of solitude and scattered rumors, Macaulay found love with actress Brenda Song, known for her work on The Sweet Life of Zack and Cody and The Social Network. The two met on the set of a film in 2017 and quietly began building a life together. In April 2021, they welcomed their first child, a baby boy named Dakota. He was named after Macaulay's late sister, Dakota Culkin, who died in 2008.
Actress Brenda Song has revealed the name of her and Macaulay Culkin's 2-year-old son.
The birth was announced with no fanfare, no magazine covers, no exclusive interviews. Just a short, heartfelt statement. "We're overjoyed." And that was enough. The boy who once couldn't leave the house without cameras in his face had become a man who now cherished privacy, who valued stability, family, and normalcy.
Thanks for believing in me and my family. I love you so much, but you're my family.
In a 2020 Esquire interview, he said, "People assume I'm crazy or damaged. I get it. But the truth is, I'm doing really well." And he was. He had spent years reclaiming his identity, not as Kevin McAllister, not as a tabloid figure, but as Macaulay Culkin, the person, not a punchline, not a cautionary tale, just a human being trying to live a balanced life. He joked about changing his middle name to Macaulay Culkin in an online poll. He appeared in quirky commercials. He roasted himself on podcasts. He embraced the weirdness of his fame instead of running from it. And in doing so, he created a version of celebrity that's almost non-existent. Fame without ego. Presence without pressure. Today, Macaulay Culkin isn't chasing relevance. He's not desperate to recapture childhood glory or erase the past. Instead, he's focused on what matters: being a good partner, a loving father, a mentally healthy adult, and sometimes just a guy who still loves The Legend of Zelda and pizza.
Dealing with my pizza band, remember that? You just always work so tirelessly for me.
In a world obsessed with reinvention, Culkin didn't need to become someone new. He just needed to be allowed to grow up. Macaulay Culkin was never just the kid from Home Alone. He was a child trying to survive an adult world that chewed him up and moved on. He didn't disappear, he escaped. Today, he lives quietly, happily, and freely. Not as the kid from Home Alone, but as a man who learned the hardest lesson early, that sometimes walking away is the most powerful move you can make. And that, in itself, is a comeback.